Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to the second episode of School Business Tech. We've got a great episode today, obviously on the back of some of the big news that's been happening in the industry with ESS and becoming part of the Parent Pay Group. It seemed a really timely kind of point to have a conversation about the Big Eight. And I'm welcoming today Graham Reed, who's going to be joining us. And Graham's got some real insight about the Big Eight, and we're going to be just asking Graham some questions to uncover the Big Eight and who they are and what they're all about and how that's going to affect the school business professionals, you like. Graham is the founder and principal consultant at Omega Pegasus, and he's been working with school business tech since 2004 when he started as an ICT support technician. Today, he uses his product knowledge and edtech and data expertise to support businesses and grow sector brands. Good afternoon, Graham. How are you doing?
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. And thanks for joining us on this session. I know we've been having a bit of a tete-a-tete on LinkedIn and catching up, obviously, offline as well, which is great. So it's great to have you on here. It's great to have you on the early episodes because I know you've got a lot to say on this matter. But we're going to kick off straight away, really, by helping to contextualize this for some of our kind of audience. So could you just tell me a bit more about who are the Big Eight?
Yeah, sure. So the eight organisations that I turned the Big Eight just recently, particularly with the news from Montague and the Parent Pay Group purchasing Capital Education Services. And these are organisations that have really come about over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. Many of them have been around for a lot longer, but certainly come to prominence in the education sector in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And what they've been doing is they've been kind of buying up, acquiring or merging many of the household names that we already knew about, particularly within the MIS sector, particularly with assessments, and very much so within the administration side of school edtech. So these organisations, I'm just going to, pardon me, I'm going to read from my list, make sure I capture them all. We've got Community Brands, we've got Jonas Group, who around the world are part of Constellation. We've got Access Group, we've got Iris. More recently, we've got Juniper. We've also got Civica as well. We've got The Key. And then with the news in the last week or so, we've got Montague, or as we're going to end up knowing them, the Parent Pay Group within the UK. So there is all organisations that have, as I say, have purchased or acquired other organisations, and typically within the administrative side of school. So not so much the learning side, curriculums, things like that, not so much the teaching side, but more on the administration side. So we're talking things like MIS, communications, school payments, and assessment as well. And so these are all groups that are coming together, buying up all of these, and they're doing various bits and pieces with those technologies in various different ways.
Okay. And so can you tell me, as we start to see this kind of siloed group and these pillars of these organizations, like you said, that own this estate, is there going to be an issue with only kind of having 8 providers that have acquired all the bits in the market?
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be to some degree there. The first and foremost is going to be a real limitation of options for schools, for their customers, and there will be other things as well, but that's going to be the biggest one. Is potentially a slight lack of competition and a lack of ability for new entrants to kind of enter the market. We're not at the moment talking about kind of Competition Markets Authority getting involved so much, but it will be that much more difficult to go up against those bigger organisations. It's largely been the same for many years. If we take just the MIS space, for example, that's largely remained unchanged for many years. But there are some great examples of people that have proven that you can enter that market and do it very well. Scholar Pack, Pupil Asset, and now going to be Horizon under Juniper, have proven that we can do those sorts of things. There's going to be lots of consolidation, where there's multiple products offered within the same company. And I've worked for 2 of these organisations myself over the past 3 years, one being Community Brands, the other Jonas Group. And some of those, they have multiple product offerings within that, and they will do different things, in that group. Community Brands, so far, and they've only kind of been a combined organisation for about 2 or 3 years now. They're still providing all the software that they had previously, and are doing a lot of work with integration, looking at different markets. Jonas Group, on the other hand, have always been, as an organisation, Jonas just buy up companies, and in the UK they bought up, in particular, many of the cashless catering organisations, and they're quite happy for them to compete with one another. Now, those organisations largely remain independent, continue working. They just have the backing of those, of those bigger brothers that sit above them, and so there hasn't been, kind of much consolidation for organisations within there. So there's different things that will happen with those sorts of organisations as well.
In one hand, my understanding is, like you said, there's going to be a consolidation where they'll merge products, or maybe merge companies together, synchronize them under one brand, and then on the other side, they might literally run them in parallel. So they own the companies, but literally get them to compete. What's the impact of this going to be on innovation and product innovation within the school business technology kind of space?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there will be some changes there, and I don't think so much of that is down to the technology that's involved. It's around the companies and the way that they operate. So in some of those organisations where they will have, where they will be looking to consolidate, particularly where they have just bought out companies and there's been a lot of money spent on them, the first thing that typically happens, and I've seen this happen as well, is there'll be a huge focus on recouping that money, making sure that money is recouped via increasing sales, by reducing headcounts potentially, various other efficiencies, because what they want to, those new owners want to start to see returns very, very quickly on all of that. But on the flip side, there will be opportunities for investment. These organizations do tend to have very deep pockets, so there is opportunities for innovation. There is also good opportunities as well, where we've seen some organizations, take Juniper for example, they've just bought up I believe 3 very similar of the assessment type platforms. They've taken on Classroom Monitor, Target Tracker, and also recently Citra as well. So they're really going after the market space as being the assessment guys within within edtech, and that's fantastic, because it does mean that they have got a huge wealth of experience and knowledge and expertise under their one brand now to really go after that assessment area. And if they are become the assessment gurus of the market, what they can do is they can plow huge amounts of innovation and research and development into those products. On the flip side of that, take Iris Group. They've been doing a lot of purchasing this year as well. They took on iSAMS as an MIS, which came as a bit of a surprise to many people in the market. What I understand they're working a lot on at the moment is integration across those platforms. So what Iris have got is a really compelling kind of all through administrative system, from MIS, communications, payments, because they've got parent mail and parent mail pay. They've got BioStore as well now. So they've got many things that the school would need to administrate their school, particularly from that back office environment. And what they'll undoubtedly be working on is the integration between all of those. So there's a very seamless experience between all of them. And what it also means is that then it's then much harder. And I don't mean negatively, but it's much more compelling reason for people to take on all of the Iris products in that space and stay with them. On the flip side, we do have to be careful to see, actually, does that mean that customers may feel a little bit locked in, because actually they won't get as good of an experience, if they have kind of what schools have and multi-academy trusts have been doing for so many years now, in picking those best of breeds and expecting them to all work together. But time will tell, and I'm sure many won't be kind of caught out by the things that happened kind of 10, 15 years ago, when Capita in particular were investigated for kind of not allowing the right amounts of integration to happen and stifling the market.
So integrations, you think, are going to be a big thing, either whether it's within the ecosystem of one of these big 8 and their systems, so that they talk to each other, but you also think integration potentially between cross-platform might also be a thing, because the market might choose. They say, okay, well, I like this finance system from this provider. I want this online payment system. I want this cashless catering platform. I want them all to talk to. Do you think there'll be, if some of these big 8 choose not to collaborate or work, do you think that'll have a negative impact or a positive impact on them?
I think I think it's a very interesting time. I think they will have to work together, and it's in their interest to work together as well, because we've almost come full circle here, with the MIS providers in particular always being the big eight, the big nine, the big 10 that we've always had for 15 years now. There was always an expectation for them all to work together with those smaller organisations and those specialists, the communications, the payment systems, the assessment systems. And now we've got fewer but larger organisations looking after more of those individual products. There will be a number of organisations, multi-academy trusts in particular, that will kind of fly their flag against one of those organisations. Worked with some of them, on projects like that in the past. But there will also be, there is a much greater awareness now of wanting to pick the best of breed. There is much more understanding in the market of what all of the products and services are there from all the different players across all the different kind of subsectors, payments, communications, etc. So schools are much more used to picking that best of breed, and because there is an expectation to do that, it's in those the big eight's best interests to make sure that they do continue to do that. They perfectly acceptable, and we would absolutely expect them to be offering even better within their own products and services. Take Iris, for example, they've got that complete solution. I absolutely would expect there to be benefits to taking all of their products over kind of mixing and matching. But what everybody needs to be very careful of is that they don't go the opposite way and be detrimental to making services less poorer than they have been kind of previously.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, it's really interesting, the kind of growth. I mean, one's got a huge amount of coverage this year. Obviously they do a lot of integration with the MIS system, but then they extended that to kind of do the free school meal vouchers. And I know a lot of school business professionals absolutely love that system. Group Call have obviously made their career, from very, very much being part of the Group Call exporter system. So there is that place, isn't there, for those integration tools to support those smaller providers. And finally, just last question from me for today's session. What are your predictions for school business technology in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you think we should be expecting?
Well, I think we've got a taste of it this year. I think there will be more acquisitions. I think many more of the small and even medium-sized kind of edtech suppliers across various different sectors will continue to be purchased, will be absorbed. I don't imagine we'll see many more. I don't think we'll get to a big 10, for example. I think we've probably seen the bulk of the bigger purchases that are going to happen. There aren't many other big prizes left on the market space across MIS, across any of the systems. So I think we're kind of there in terms of who those players are going to be. I think we will see that there will be a real mixture of organizations that specialize or focus on particular areas, whether it be Jonas with kind of cash systems and payments, whether it be with Juniper with their assessment systems, or we continue to see this kind of this whole school solution in terms of acquisitions. But I think we'll continue to see lots of acquisitions rather than brand new innovations in that space. But I think as well there will be over the next kind of 2 or 3 years, I think what we will start to see is a much more open kind of marketplace of integration. So what I would absolutely love to see, and I've actually had a few discussions over the past couple of weeks on this, is marketplaces of integrations very similar to what Salesforce or Slack, organizations in the productivity space, this is absolutely rife of hundreds, thousands of kind of connectors and integrations and tweaks that can be made to these systems and to these kind of whole suites of products that make them better than what they already are. And that's by kind of bolting on additional systems, and these could be additional systems that in other products from these other big 8 companies, but it enhances better. So again, rather than everybody having to kind of reinvent the wheel each time, actually this best of breed will continue. And when you mentioned Group Call earlier, whereby they've been specialists in the data market space, pulling data from MIS to all these third-party systems, what we will then start to see is all those third-party systems that traditionally have just ingested the information will suddenly then want to start sharing that information back to other providers as well. So what we will have is this, instead of a hub and spoke of data movement, it will be much more of a mesh and a net of information moving left, right, and center. And I think finally as well, analytics is going to play such an important part. many people have tried. There's a few products out there, and all of the multi-academy trusts in particular, they're all starting to play with decent analytics themselves, not the stuff that we've seen time and time again, and people just put a pretty chart on their dashboards, but real good predictive and extrapolation of information, to provide real, true, good insights. And again, this is not just about the traditional stuff that we have always seen in edtech, which is attendance, assessment, behavior, how much money has been spent on X. It's actually real, true, holistic analytics across many, many facets of a child's life to get the best picture of what they look like, so that schools can intervene and guide them best moving forwards.
Brilliant. Graham, thank you so much for your insight. Honestly, really, really insightful stuff. And obviously, comes from this knowledge comes from a lot of experience, obviously, within the sector. So really appreciate your time today. For today's audience, obviously, you can check Graham out on Twitter. Here's his Twitter handle, or you can add him onto LinkedIn, here's his LinkedIn extension. If you want to add me on Twitter, follow me at Ryan H. Green, or again, Ryan H. Green on LinkedIn. If you want to stay up to date with all the school business tech news that we're doing and running this series, search School Business Tech on YouTube. All that leaves me to say is thank you once again, Graham. Really appreciate your insight today. Have a really great evening.